Manchester United handed Dan Ashworth update as Newcastle sporting director takes action. Newcastle United sporting director Dan Ashworth has been on gardening leave since February after declaring his interest to join Man United. Newcastle United sporting director Dan Ashworth is reportedly set to take his employer to arbitration to push through a move to Manchester United. Ashworth has been on gardening leave since February after he informed the North East club that he wished to join Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS at Old Trafford. Now, The Athletic reports that Ashworth has moved to try and help facilitate his switch to United. The decision to go to an arbitrator could work either for or against Ashworth. The process of arbitration sees both sides put their case forward to an independent adjudicator who will decide who is in the right and who is in the wrong. Crucially, this avoids both parties being drawn into an expensive court battle. It is understood Newcastle want United to pay £20 million to release Ashworth out of his contract early. However, Ratcliffe is reluctant to pay that price. When asked about Ashworth in February, Ratcliffe was complimentary of the former Brighton and Hove Albion director. "I think Dan Ashworth is clearly one of the top sporting directors in the world, I've no doubt. He's a very capable person. He's interested in the Manchester United job because it's probably the biggest sporting director job in the world just now, with the biggest challenge. We've obviously had words with Newcastle. They would clearly be disappointed to lose Dan. But what I do think is completely absurd is suggesting a man who is really good at his job sits in his garden for 1.5 years. That's completely stupid. Once Ashworth does join United, he will take up a role similar to that which he held at St James Park. He shall be aided by Sir Dave Brailsford, Omar Barada, and Jason Wilcox. Dan Ashworth to take Newcastle to arbitration over protracted Manchester United move. Dan Ashworth appears to have grown tired of the protracted negotiations between Newcastle and Manchester United over his move to Old Trafford and is set to take his old club to arbitration. The highly regarded 53-year-old, who has previously held roles with the Football Association and Brighton, informed Newcastle of his intention to leave St James Park earlier this year. Newcastle announced in February that Ashworth had been placed on gardening leave, though negotiations between the clubs over a compensation package have not progressed significantly since then. The Magpies have been holding out for a fee of around £20 million for Ashworth, though United's new owners INEOS only want to pay a sum in the region of the £5 million that Newcastle paid to Brighton just over 2 years ago. With talks at an impasse, The Athletic are reporting that the matter is now on course to be decided by a third-party court of arbitration. Ashworth is hoping the move will help facilitate his switch to Old Trafford, and the case is anticipated to start in May, while it will last a number of weeks. Given that no technical or sporting director has ever commanded a compensation fee anywhere close to the £20 million Newcastle are demanding, it now seems likely Ashworth will ultimately move for significantly less than that. There had been suggestions that Newcastle were prepared to hold Ashworth to his gardening leave until the back end of 2025, when his contract lasts until. But, if the arbitration goes smoothly, he could now be in place at Old Trafford in time for the start of the summer transfer window. Speaking about United's move for Ashworth back in February, INEOS founder Sir Jim Ratcliffe said, "I think Dan Ashworth is clearly one of the top sporting directors in the world, I've no doubt. He's a very capable person. He's interested in the Manchester United job because it's probably the biggest sporting director job in the world just now, with the biggest challenge. We've obviously had words with Newcastle. They would clearly be disappointed to lose Dan. But what I do think is completely absurd is suggesting a man who is really good at his job sits in his garden for 1.5 years. That's completely stupid. United have already brought in Jason Wilcox from Southampton as technical director, and he was at Old Trafford on Wednesday to watch the 4-2 win over Sheffield United, while Omar Barada has been poached from Manchester City and begins as CEO this summer. Michael Olai's stance on Manchester United transfer and other rumours. Latest Man United transfer news and gossip with updates on Crystal Palace star Michael Olais and Juventus defender Gleison Bremer. Manchester United are being linked with several potential new signings ahead of the summer transfer window. United have just 5 Premier League fixtures remaining this season to try and climb the table. The Reds also have the FA Cup semi-final against Manchester City to look forward to next month. Erik ten Hag's future has been the subject of intense speculation over recent months. Despite this, United are continuing to be linked with potential new players who could be added to the squad when the window reopens at the end of the season. The latest rumours centre around a potential new forward and a new defender arriving at Old Trafford. Reports have suggested that United could make a move to sign Michael Olise from Crystal Palace. According to 90 Minutes, Olise himself is interested in the idea of signing for United this summer. It has been claimed that if the Reds were to submit an offer to sign the Palace star, Olise would show a desire to complete a move to Old Trafford. Olise was linked with a move to Chelsea last summer before he signed a new long-term contract with Palace. Throughout the season, the Reds have been credited as showing an interest in signing Olise, who has also been linked with Liverpool and Arsenal over the course of the season. Elsewhere, United are continuing to be linked with Juventus defender Gleison Bremer. According to Italian news outlet Gazzetta dello Sport, there is an increased likelihood that Bremer could leave Juve at the end of the season. Bremer is reported to have a release clause in his contract worth €60 million, £51 million, but does not come into effect until 2025. Despite this, the report speculates that Bremer could still leave Juventus this summer. It has been claimed that United are still interested in signing the centre-back, who signed a long-term contract with the Serie A giants back in December that runs until 2028. Manchester United and Man City told Deadline to trigger Bruno Guimaraes' release clause. Newcastle midfielder Bruno Guimaraes has been linked to Man United and Man City and could be on the move this summer. Manchester United and Manchester City have been informed Bruno Guimaraes' release clause will be valid from the last week of May to the beginning of the last week of June. Guimaraes has been a revelation for Newcastle since signing from Lyon in January 2022 and is now regarded as one of the finest midfielders in the Premier League. Newcastle are theoretically the richest club in the world after their Saudi-led takeover, but there's a growing acceptance at St James's Park that pragmatic sales will be required to operate within financial fair play constraints, which could see Guimaraes leave this summer. City have been linked with a move for Guimaraes and reports have suggested there could be interest from United, who Dan Ashworth is set to join from Newcastle. Guimaraes' camp negotiated a release clause in his latest Newcastle contract and it's emerged that can be triggered from the last week of May to the beginning of the last week of June. The Brazilian international will be available for £100 million during that time frame and Newcastle will have full control over talks once that deadline expires. On Friday, Newcastle manager Eddie Howe confirmed the release clause in his press conference and said, having that was well planned and structured by the club, in a sense that there's a sort of finish point. We don't want constant speculation, it's not healthy for the player or us. It goes without saying we want to keep him, I want to build our team around him. His form has been very good, he seems very happy and settled. He'll be thinking about a very busy summer ahead, where hopefully we can take the team with him, a big part of it. But we aren't in control of that, so let's see. I am aware of his contractual status, but it's not something I focus on. When it's something you don't necessarily have control over, I don't tend to worry about the speculation linking him with moves. It goes without saying what my thoughts on the Bruno situation are. Newcastle are currently hamstrung by FFP constraints. Where we sit now in terms of wages and transfer fees, I don't think we are in a position to do that, Howe said when asked whether his side would sign world-class players in the summer transfer window. We have to sign and develop players with the potential to become world-class. We are well on the way to doing that. It does not mean you can't have world-class players in your squad, it just means that you have to work really hard with them. I have no issue doing it. Newcastle challenged the traditional top 6 last season by qualifying for the Champions